The wheelwright's mare had already broken one man's arm and opened another's scalp when Cara Kellison walked into the yard, set down her pack, and stood absolutely still in the corner farthest from the stall. Thom Lawson watched from the forge doorway, hammer still raised from the rim he had been shaping. The mare was his master's prize breeding stock, a tall bay with a white blaze and a temperament that had curdled somewhere between her last foaling and the summer heat. She had arrived 3 days ago from a coaching in 20 miles south, sent for shoeing and a wheel repair on the cart she had nearly destroyed. Master Garrick had already sent word that he would not touch her, and the 2 men bleeding in the dust had been foolish enough to try anyway. The orc woman did not look at the horse. She looked at the fence posts, the water trough, the leather straps hanging from their pegs. Her skin was the color of spring moss, her tusks small enough that they barely showed past her upper lip. She wore a rough linen shirt and canvas trousers that had been mended at the knees, and her dark hair was tied back with a strip of cloth that might once have been red. She was not tall, barely reached Tom's shoulder, but her arms were corded with muscle and her hands looked like they knew work. Master Garrick came out of the workshop wiping grease from his fingers. He was a thick man with a beard gone gray at the edges and eyes that missed nothing. He looked at the mare, at the 2 men now limping toward the pump, and finally at Cara. "You are the one from the hiring post," he said. "I am." Her voice was low and clear. "Can you work wood?" "I can." "Can you work iron, enough to hold a piece and swing true?" Garrick grunted. "Can you work that damned horse?" Cara turned her head then, just enough to see the stall from the corner of her eye. The mare was pressed into the far corner, ears flat, nostrils wide. Foam flecked her chest. "I can try," Cara said. She did not move for an hour. Thom went back to his rim, Garrick to his ledgers, and the 2 injured men to the village for bandages and humiliation. The mare stamped and snorted and eventually quieted. The sun climbed higher. Cara shifted her weight once, leaning her shoulders against the fence post, and folded her arms loosely across her chest. Thom found himself glancing up more often than the work required. He had seen orc laborers before, passing through with harvest crews or road gangs, but never one who moved like this. She did not fidget. She did not hum or spit or mutter. She simply waited, and the quality of her waiting was different from anything he had known. The mare took a step forward. Then another. Her ears came up, swiveled. Cara did not move. The mare stretched her neck, blew out a long breath, and took 3 more steps until she was standing at the stall gate with her nose inches from Cara's shoulder. Cara turned her head slowly, met the mare's eye, and after a moment lifted one hand. She held it palm out, fingers loose, and waited again. The mare sniffed, considered, and finally lowered her head. Cara scratched behind the mare's ear with 2 fingers, her touch light and exact. The mare sighed. Garrick came out again, saw them, and stopped in his tracks. "Well," he said. "Well." Cara stepped back and the mare followed her to the gate. Cara unlatched it with one hand, the other still resting on the mare's neck, and led her out into the yard. The mare walked quietly, her head low. "Shoe her," Garrick said. "If you can do that, the job is yours." Cara nodded. She brought the mare to the anvil post, ran her hand down the mare's foreleg, and lifted the hoof without fuss. Thom handed her the tools as she needed them, and she worked quickly, her crooked fingers moving with a confidence that surprised him. He noticed the fingers then, the 4th and 5th on her left hand, both heeled at odd angles. Old breaks, poorly set. She finished all 4 hooves in less than an hour, and the mare stood calm throughout. When it was done, Cara led her back to the stall, latched the gate, and walked away without looking back. Garrick hired her on the spot. She took the small room above the tool shed, the one with the narrow cot and the single window that looked out over the pasture. Her wages were fair, her meals taken with the rest of them at the long table in Garrick's kitchen, and her work was steady from dawn until the light failed. Thom worked beside her most days. The wheelwright's yard sat at the junction of two coach roads, and there was always something to mend or make. Broken axles, split rims, cracked hubs. Garrick took the fine work and the negotiations, and Thom and Cara did the rest. She was good with her hands despite the crooked fingers. She could shave a spoke to perfect roundness, fit a mortise so tight it needed no peg, and read the grain of wood like some people read letters. She did not talk much, but she listened when Garrick explained a joint or when Thom mentioned a trick he had learned from the blacksmith 2 villages over. At meals, she was quiet, polite, and careful. She passed dishes without being asked, cleaned her plate, and thanked Garrick's wife Mabel for the food. She did not laugh at the jokes, but she smiled sometimes, a small quick thing that came and went before anyone could remark on it. Thom found himself watching her the way he had watched her with the mare. She moved through the yard as though she were always aware of where everyone was, always calculating distance and angle. When Garrick came up behind her, she would turn before he spoke. When Thom crossed the yard toward her, she would shift her stance just slightly to keep him in her sight. It was a month before he realized what he was seeing. She was not cautious. She was braced. The work picked up as summer leaned toward autumn. The coaching trade swelled with merchants moving goods before the roads turned to mud, and the yard was full of wagons waiting for repairs. Cara worked longer hours, her hands raw from the rasp and the plane, and still she took time each evening to visit the mare. The mare had foaled late in the spring, and the colt was growing fast, all legs and curiosity. The mare had gentled since Cara's arrival, and now she came to the fence when Cara walked past, looking for the apple cores and carrot ends that Cara saved from the kitchen. Thom went out one evening to check a wheel he had left to set, and found Cara standing at the pasture gate with the mare's head resting on her shoulder. She was murmuring something too low to hear, her hand stroking the mare's neck in long, slow passes. He stopped, not wanting to intrude. But she heard him anyway and turned, her hand stilling. "She likes you," Thom said. Cara's expression did not change. "She knows I will not surprise her." "Is that what it takes?" "With her, yes." Thom came closer, rested his arms on the top rail of the fence. The colt frisked past, chasing a moth. "You have a hand for animals. I have a hand for things that have been mishandled." There was no bitterness in her voice, just fact. Thom glanced at her, but she was watching the mare again. "Garrick says you are the best hire he has made in 5 years," Thom said. "Garrick is kind. Garrick is practical. He does not say things he does not mean." She smiled then, that quick flash. "Then I will work to keep his good opinion." Thom wanted to ask her where she had learned her trade, where she had come from, what had broken her fingers. But the questions felt too large, too blunt, and he did not know how to make them smaller. Instead he said, "The colt is going to be tall, like his mother. Will you gentle him too? If Garrick asks, he will ask." They stood in silence while the light faded and the first stars appeared over the eastern hills. The mare moved away to graze, and the colt followed. Cara's hands rested on the rail, and Thom could see the crooked fingers clearly in the dusk, the way they bent just slightly wrong. He wanted to touch them. He wanted to ask if they hurt. He did neither. The days grew shorter and the work did not slacken. Cara moved through it all with the same steady focus, her presence in the yard as constant as the anvil or the forge. Thom found himself arranging his tasks so that he worked near her, close enough to talk if either of them wanted to, far enough that it did not seem deliberate. She never spoke of her past. She never mentioned family or friends or where she had been before the hiring post. Mabel tried once, gently over a meal, and Cara answered in pleasantries that said nothing at all. After that, Mabel stopped asking, but Thom noticed things. The way Cara ate quickly, as though someone might take the plate away. The way she kept her belongings in her pack, always ready to move. The way she flinched, just once when a peddler shouted in the road and she had not seen him coming. He noticed the way she watched the road, too. Not often, but often enough. As though she were expecting someone. It was late September when he found her in the workshop after dark, planing a length of oak by lamplight. Her sleeves were rolled up and her hair had come loose from its tie. She was working a board that Garrick had set aside for a delicate repair, shaving it down in long, curling ribbons that fell around her feet. Thom had come back for a chisel he had left on the bench. He stopped in the doorway, not wanting to startle her, but she looked up anyway. "I thought everyone had gone to bed," she said. "I forgot something." He crossed to the bench, found the chisel, and hesitated. "That is fine work. It needs to be fine. Garrick says the client is particular. Garrick says everyone is particular when he wants an excuse to do his best." She smiled again, and this time it lasted a moment longer. "He is a good teacher. You do not need much teaching. I need more than you think." Thom leaned against the workbench, the chisel loose in his hand. "Where did you learn to work wood like that?" Her hands stilled on the plane. For a moment he thought she would not answer. Then she said, "I was contracted to a caravan master when I was 15. He hauled goods along the southern coaching routes. I worked in his wagon shop during the winter layovers. He taught you." "His wheelwright taught me." "The master did not care what I learned as long as I worked." There was something in her voice, something flat and careful. Thom said, "You are not with the caravan now." "No. Why not?" She looked at him then, and her eyes were dark and steady. "Because I bought out my contract last spring and I will not go back." "He let you go." "He did not have a choice. I had the coin." Thom wanted to ask how she had earned the coin, wanted to ask what kind of man held a contract on a girl of 15, wanted to ask 100 things. But her face had closed again, and he knew he had already pushed too far. "Well," he said, "his loss is Garrick's gain." She bent back to the plane. "I hope Garrick thinks so." Thom left her to the work, but he did not sleep well that night. He kept thinking of her crooked fingers, of the way she watched the road, of the flat tone in her voice when she spoke of the caravan master. He thought of the mare, too, and the way Cara had stood so still, letting the animal come to her on its own terms. It was another week before the day that changed things. Thom was working on a wheel hub at the bench near the forge, the wood clamped tight while he shaped the mortise for the spoke. Cara was beside him, planing down a replacement fellow, and the air was full of the smell of fresh-cut oak and coal smoke. Garrick was in the yard, arguing amiably with a merchant over the price of a full set of wheels. Thom reached for the plain blade he had left on the bench between them, meaning to check the edge. His hand passed in front of Cara's, close enough that his shadow crossed her work. She flinched so hard that she knocked the bench, and the plane skittered across the surface and clattered to the floor. She jerked back, her eyes wide, her breath coming fast, and for a moment she looked at him as though he were someone else entirely. Thom froze. "I am sorry," he said. "I did not mean." She bent quickly, picked up the plane, and set it back on the bench with shaking hands. "It is fine," she said. "It is nothing. It is not nothing. Please." Her voice was rough. "It is nothing." But it was something, and they both knew it. Thom stood there, the chisel still in his hand, and felt the air between them change. He wanted to touch her, to apologize, to ask what had happened to make her so afraid. But he knew, suddenly and completely, that asking would only make it worse. So instead he said, "I am going to reach past you for the blade oil, on the shelf behind you. I will go slowly." She blinked, looked at him, and nodded. He moved carefully, telegraphing every motion, and took the oil from the shelf. She watched him, her shoulders still tight, but she did not flinch again. After that, he began to announce everything. When he crossed the workshop toward her, he said, "Coming up on your left." When he reached for a tool near her hand, he said, "Taking the rasp." When he stepped behind her to get to the lumber rack, he said, "Passing behind." The first few times she looked at him strangely, but she did not flinch, and after a while she began to respond. "Go ahead." "I am moving. Clear." It became their private language, a code of safety and respect that no one else in the yard needed or noticed. Garrick saw it, Thom thought, but Garrick said nothing. Mabel saw it too, and she began to give Cara a little more space at the table, a little more warning when she brought a dish to the counter. Cara did not thank him. But she stopped watching the doorways quite so carefully when he was near. And once, when he said, "Coming up behind," and stepped past her to reach the clamp rack, she said "thank you" so quietly he almost missed it. The autumn deepened and the work continued. The leaves turned gold and red, and the mornings came with frost on the fences. Cara worked through it all, steady and silent, and Thom worked beside her and learned the shape of her silences. He learned that she was quiet when she was content, and silent when she was not. He learned that she liked the smell of fresh bread and the sound of the mare nickering in the pasture. He learned that she could splice a broken wheel spoke so seamlessly that even Garrick had trouble finding the joint, and that she could not abide waste. He learned, too, that she had begun to relax. Not much, not all the way, but enough that sometimes she hummed while she worked, low and tuneless. Enough that she smiled more often and the smiles reached her eyes. And he learned, though he tried not to notice, that he had fallen in love with her. It was not a sudden thing. There was no single moment when the world shifted and his heart changed its allegiance. It was gradual, a slow accumulation of small things. The way she frowned when she was concentrating. The way she wiped sawdust from her hands before she touched anything clean. The way she stood in the pasture at sunset with the mare and the colt, her face soft in the failing light. He did not tell her. He did not know how. And he was afraid, more afraid than he had ever been of anything, that if he spoke it would break whatever fragile trust had grown between them. So he worked beside her, and he announced his movements, and he hoped that someday she would see him the way he saw her. It was mid-October when the caravan came. Thom heard it before he saw it. The rattle of wheels and the shouts of drovers, the creak of leather and the jingle of harness. He looked up from the axle he was greasing and saw the line of wagons turning off the main coach road into the yard. There were 8 wagons in all, big high-sided freight haulers built for long roads and heavy loads. The lead wagon was painted green and gold, and the man on the box was broad-shouldered and red-faced, with a hat pulled low over his eyes. Garrick came out to meet them, wiping his hands on his apron. The man climbed down from the box, shook Garrick's hand, and began talking prices and repairs. The other drovers started unhitching the teams, and the yard filled with noise and motion. Thom looked around for Cara and found her standing just inside the workshop door. She was staring at the lead wagon, her face gone pale, her hands clenched at her sides. He crossed to her quickly. "What is wrong?" She did not answer. She was staring at the red-faced man, and the expression on her face was something Thom had never seen before. Not fear exactly, something colder, something older. "Cara," he said. She turned to him, and her eyes were blank. "That is him," she said. "That is the caravan master." Thom looked back at the man. He was still talking to Garrick, gesturing at the wagons, his voice loud and jovial. He did not look like a monster. He looked like any other merchant, rough and practical and concerned with his profit. "Are you certain?" Thom said. I am certain. Does he know you are here? I do not know. I did not think he traveled this route. But even as she spoke, the man turned and his gaze swept across the yard. It caught on Cara and his expression changed. He smiled, wide and cold, and started toward them. Cara stepped back into the shadow of the workshop. Thom stepped forward, putting himself between her and the approaching man. The caravan master stopped a few feet away. Up close, he smelled of sweat and tobacco and something sour that Thom could not name. His eyes were small and sharp, and they flicked past Thom to Cara. "Well," he said, "Cara Kellison. I thought that was you." Cara said nothing. "You are a long way from home, girl." "I have no home," Cara said. Her voice was steady, but Thom could hear the effort it took. "You have a contract," the man said. "Or did you forget? I bought out my contract. You took the coin." "I took a down payment," the man said. "You still owe me for 3 years of training and for the tools you took, and for the breach fee I have the papers." "You are lying." The man's smile widened. "Am I? We can ask the magistrate when he comes through next month, or you can come back with me now and work off what you owe, and we will call it settled." Thom's hands curled into fists. "She is not going anywhere with you." The man looked at him for the first time, really looked, and his eyes were flat. "Who are you?" "I work here." "Then you should stay out of things that are not your business." "If you are harassing Garrick's people, it is my business," the man laughed. "Harassing? I am collecting a debt." That is all. Garrick had come over, drawn by the raised voices. "Is there a problem here?" The caravan master turned to him, all affability again. "No problem, friend. Just a small matter of a contract dispute. This girl used to work for me, and she left before her term was up. I am willing to settle it quietly if she is reasonable." Garrick looked at Cara. "Is this true?" "I bought out my contract," Cara said. "I have the receipt. It is in my room." "A receipt for half the debt," the caravan master said smoothly. "I have the full accounting here." He pulled a folded paper from his coat and handed it to Garrick. Garrick unfolded it, scanned it, and frowned. The numbers were large, written in a crabbed hand, and the charges were itemized in detail. Training fees, tool costs, room and board, breach penalties. Thom looked over Garrick's shoulder and felt his stomach turn. The total was more than Cara could earn in 2 years, even with fair wages. "This is excessive," Garrick said. "It is what she owes," the caravan master said. "If you do not believe me, we can wait for the magistrate." Cara's face had gone blank again, the way it did when she was working through something painful. "I will get my things," she said. "No," Thom said. She looked at him. "I have no choice." "You have a choice. Do not go with him." "If I do not, he will bring the magistrate, and the magistrate will enforce the contract. I will go anyway, and Garrick will be fined for harboring me." "Only if the contract is valid," Thom said. He looked at the caravan master. "You said the magistrate comes through next month." "That is right." "Then we will wait for him. Cara will stay here under Garrick's employ until the matter is settled legally." The caravan master's smile faded. "That is not acceptable." "It is the law," Thom said. "You cannot compel her to leave without a magistrate's order." "I can if she agrees." "She does not agree." The man's face darkened. He looked at Cara. "You would trust this boy over me. I fed you, clothed you, taught you a trade. And this is how you repay me." Cara met his eyes. "You broke my fingers." The words fell into the yard like stones. The caravan master went very still. "You broke them and set them wrong on purpose," Cara said. Her voice was shaking now, but she did not look away. "Because I spilled glue on a piece you were saving. You said it would teach me to be more careful." The man's jaw worked. "You are a liar." "I am not." Garrick stepped forward. "I think you should leave." The caravan master looked at him, at Thom, at Cara. His hands were fists at his sides. "I will be back," he said, "with the magistrate and the law, and you will all regret this." He turned and walked back to his wagons. The drovers were watching now, silent and wary. The caravan master barked an order and they began hitching the teams again. Within 10 minutes, the wagons were rolling back out onto the coach road. Thom watched them go, his heart hammering in his chest. Garrick put a hand on Cara's shoulder. "Go to your room," he said gently. "Bring me the receipt and anything else you have that shows you paid him." Cara nodded and walked toward the shed. Her steps were slow, deliberate, as though she were walking through deep water. Thom turned to Garrick. "He will come back, I know, and the magistrate will believe him. He has papers. Papers can be forged. Can we prove it?" Garrick shook his head. "Not without witnesses. Not without someone who knows his business." Thom thought fast. The magistrate would come, and the magistrate would look at the papers, and the magistrate would see an orc woman and a caravan master with a grievance. The law was supposed to be fair, but Thom had lived long enough to know that fair was a flexible thing. "Where is the magistrate now?" Thom asked. "He circuits through the northern villages this time of year. He will be in Cross Hill, I think, or maybe Ashford." "How far is Cross Hill?" 2 days' ride." "Then I will go." Garrick looked at him. "And do what? Bring him here, before that bastard can get to him first." "Thom, the man has papers. What can you possibly—" "I do not know yet," Thom said, "but I will think of something." He went to the stable and saddled Garrick's gelding, the steady old bay that did not spook at bridges or dogs. He packed a bedroll and a little food, and he took what coin he had saved. It was not much, but it might be enough. Cara came down from her room as he was tightening the girth. She had a piece of paper in her hand, folded and creased. She held it out to him. "This is the receipt," she said, "for what I paid him." Thom took it. The ink was faded but legible. It showed a sum that was half what the caravan master claimed she owed, and it was signed with a scrawl that might have been a name. "Did he write this?" Thom asked. "His clerk did, but he signed it." Thom folded the receipt carefully and put it in his pocket. "I will bring the magistrate," he said, "and we will settle this." "Why are you doing this?" The question was so direct, so plainly spoken, that Thom did not know how to answer. "Because I love you," he thought. "Because you deserve better. Because I cannot stand the thought of you going back to that man." Instead, he said, "Because it is right." She looked at him for a long moment. Then she said, "Be careful." "I will." He swung up into the saddle and rode out of the yard before he could change his mind. The road to Cross Hill was well-traveled but rough, rutted from the autumn rains and crowded with freight traffic. Thom rode through the first day and into the night, stopping only to rest the horse and eat a little bread. He slept for a few hours in a coaching inn, paid too much for the bed, and rode out again before dawn. He reached Cross Hill late the second day. It was a market town, larger than the villages near Garrick's yard, with a square and a courthouse and a tavern that doubled as the magistrate's office. Thom stabled the horse and went inside. The magistrate was a thin man with gray hair and spectacles, and he was eating supper at a corner table when Thom found him. Thom waited until he had finished, then approached and explained the situation as clearly as he could. The magistrate listened without interrupting. When Thom finished, he said, "You rode 2 days to bring me a contract dispute. It is not a simple dispute. The man is a fraud. Do you have proof?" "I have the receipt for what she paid, and I have her testimony." "The testimony of an orc woman against a human merchant." The magistrate's voice was not unkind, but it was tired. "You must know how that will sound, I know, but it is the truth." The magistrate sighed. "I will come, but I will need to see the papers and I will need to hear from both parties. If the contract is valid, I will enforce it. And if it is not, then the man will answer for fraud and abuse of contract." It was the best Thom could hope for. He paid for the magistrate's room and board for the night, and they rode out together the next morning. The ride back took 2 days as well, and Thom spent the time thinking. He thought about Cara's crooked fingers, about the way she had flinched when he reached past her, about the flatness in her voice when she spoke of the caravan master. He thought about the mare, too, and the way Cara had waited, patient and still, until the animal trusted her. He thought about what he would say to the magistrate, and what the caravan master might say, and how the balance might tip. And he thought, constantly and helplessly, about Cara's face when she had asked him why he was doing this. They reached the yard in the late afternoon of the second day. The sun was low and golden, and the air smelled of wood smoke and horses. Garrick came out to meet them, and behind him was Cara, standing in the workshop doorway with her arms folded. The magistrate dismounted, stretched, and looked around the yard. "Where is the other party?" "He has not come back," Garrick said. "Not yet." "Then we wait." But they did not have to wait long. The next morning the caravan rolled into the yard again, the same 8 wagons, the same red-faced master. He climbed down from the box and saw the magistrate, and his expression shifted from confidence to surprise to calculation. "Your Honor," he said, "I did not expect to see you here so soon." "I was summoned," the magistrate said. "You are Dalton Merrick." "I am." "And you claim a debt against the woman Cara Kellison?" "I do. I have the papers." "Show them to me." Merrick pulled the folded document from his coat and handed it over. The magistrate unfolded it, read it carefully, and then looked at Cara. "Do you have a response to this?" Cara stepped forward. She had the receipt in her hand. "I paid him half the contract value last spring. He said the debt was settled. I have the receipt." She handed it to the magistrate. He compared the 2 documents, frowning. "This receipt shows a lesser sum than the total claimed here," he said. "Because she only paid half," Merrick said quickly. "The receipt is for a partial payment, not the full debt." "Then why does the receipt not say so?" "It was an oversight. My clerk wrote it in haste." The magistrate looked at Merrick, then at Cara. "You say he broke your fingers." Cara held up her left hand. The crooked 4th and 5th fingers were plain to see. "He broke them and set them badly, on purpose." "That is a lie," Merrick said. "She broke them in a fall. I set them as best I could." "Did you?" the magistrate said. "Are you a physician?" "I have some knowledge of such things." "And you set the bones of your contracted laborer without seeking proper care?" Merrick hesitated. "It was winter. The roads were closed." "Which winter?" "I do not recall." The magistrate turned to Cara. "When did this happen?" "3 winters ago. January." "The roads were not closed. I asked him to take me to a surgeon, and he refused." "Why would he refuse?" Cara's voice was steady, but Thom could hear the old pain beneath it. "Because he wanted me to remember. He said I had cost him a commission with my carelessness, and he wanted me to feel the price of it every day." Merrick's face flushed. "She is lying. She is a disgruntled laborer trying to avoid her obligations." "Then you will not mind if I call witnesses," the magistrate said. "Witnesses? Your drovers, the men who work your wagons." The magistrate turned and gestured to the caravan. "I would like to speak with them, separately." Merrick's jaw tightened. "They will tell you the same as I have." "Then you have nothing to fear." The magistrate spent the next 2 hours interviewing the drovers, one by one. Thom watched from the workshop, and he saw the way Merrick paced, the way his hands clenched and unclenched. Cara stood beside him, silent and pale. When it was done, the magistrate called them all together in the yard. Merrick stood on one side, Cara and Garrick and Thom on the other. The drovers stood behind their master, shifting uneasily. "I have heard testimony from 4 men," the magistrate said. "All of them agree that the girl Cara worked in your employ for 5 years. 2 of them recall the incident with her fingers. One of them says you refused to seek medical care. Another says you laughed about it. Merrick said nothing. I have also examined the contract and the receipt, the magistrate continued. The contract is valid, but the receipt clearly states that the debt was settled in full. There is no mention of partial payment. That was an error, Merrick said. An error that conveniently appears when you wish to reclaim a laborer who has left your service. She owes me. She owes you nothing. The contract was fulfilled. This second document claiming additional debt is a forgery. Merrick's face went dark. You cannot, I can, and I do. The debt is void. The woman is free of obligation. The magistrate looked at Merrick with something close to contempt. And you, sir, are guilty of fraud, of abuse of contract, and of deliberate harm to a laborer in your care. I sentence you to 6 months of labor on the public roads and restitution to Cara Kellison in the sum of 50 silver crowns. Merrick stared at him. 50 crowns. I do not have 50 crowns. Then you will work until you do, and if you do not pay, your wagons will be seized and sold. You cannot do this. I can, and I have. The magistrate turned to the drovers. This man is no longer your master. If you wish to continue the caravan, you may elect a new leader. If not, you are free to seek other employment. The drovers looked at each other, at Merrick, and then one of them stepped forward. He was an older man, gray-bearded and scarred. We will take the wagons, he said, and we will run them fair. The magistrate nodded. See that you do. Merrick lunged forward, but 2 of the drovers caught him. He struggled for a moment, then went still, breathing hard. Take him to the courthouse in Cross Hill, the magistrate said. He will serve his sentence there. They bound Merrick's hands and put him in one of the wagons. The drovers hitched the team and drove out of the yard without a backward glance. Merrick did not speak. He sat in the wagon bed with his head down, and the last Thom saw of him was his red face and his bitter eyes. The magistrate stayed for supper, accepted Garrick's thanks and a bed for the night, and rode out the next morning. When he was gone, the yard seemed very quiet. Cara stood in the pasture, watching the mare and the colt graze. Thom walked out to join her, moving slowly, announcing himself with the scrape of his boots on the gravel. She turned and looked at him. You brought him, she said. I did. Why? It was the same question she had asked before, and this time Thom knew he had to answer it honestly. Because you matter to me, he said, because I could not let him take you. She studied his face for a long moment. Then she said, my fingers still hurt when it rains. I know. And I still flinch, sometimes when I do not expect things. I know that too. Will it bother you? Thom thought about it. He thought about the way she moved through the world, careful and watchful. He thought about the language they had built together, the announcements and the warnings, the small rituals of safety. He thought about the way she had stood so still and let the mare come to her, trusting that patience was stronger than force. No, he said, it will not bother me. She looked down at her hands, at the crooked fingers. I do not know how to do this, she said. I have never, she stopped, shook her head. I have never had this. Neither have I. Then we will figure it out together, he smiled. Yes. She did not smile back, but her face softened, and she looked at him the way she had looked at the mare that first day, cautious and curious and almost ready to trust. The weeks that followed were quiet. The magistrate's judgment stood, and word of it spread along the coach roads. Cara's restitution came in increments, coins sent from Cross Hill as Merrick worked off his debt. She saved most of it, but she spent a little on good tools, a new plane and a set of chisels that fit her hand. The work in the yard continued, and Cara and Thom worked side by side as they always had. But something had shifted between them, something fragile and new. They spoke more, shared meals at the same end of the table, walked together to check on the mare and the colt in the evenings. Thom still announced his movements, and Cara still tensed sometimes when he came too close. But the tension eased a little more each day, and once, when he reached past her for a clamp and said, "Reaching left," she caught his hand and held it for a moment before letting go. Her hand was warm and rough, and the crooked fingers pressed against his palm. He did not pull away. He waited the way she had taught him to wait, and after a moment she smiled. Winter came, and with it the first snow. The coach road quieted, the traffic thinning to a trickle of hardy merchants and male riders. Garrick gave them shorter hours and more time by the fire, and the yard filled with the smell of applewood smoke and Mabel's cooking. Cara spent her free time in the pasture, working with the colt. He was half-grown now, gangly and bold, and she was teaching him to lead and to stand for grooming. Thom watched from the fence, marveling at her patience, at the way the colt followed her like a shadow. One evening, as the sun set red and cold over the western hills, she came to stand beside him at the fence. She did not speak, just stood close enough that their shoulders almost touched. Thom said, "I have been thinking." "About what?" "About the spring. Garrick says there is a pasture for at least 2 miles down the road, good grass, a creek, a sound fence. And I thought we might lease it, together, for the mare and the colt and maybe a few others." She turned to look at him. "We, if you want. I have saved a little, and with your restitution we could manage the first year." "Why would you want to do that?" He took a breath. "Because I want to build something with you, if you will have me." She was quiet for a long time. The light faded and the stars appeared, cold and bright. The mare called to the colt, and the colt answered. Finally, Cara said, "I do not know if I can be what you want. I do not want you to be anything but yourself. I am difficult, I flinch, I do not trust easily. I know. And it does not bother you." "No." She looked at him, and her eyes were dark and searching. "You are a strange man, Thom Lawson. You have said that before." "Have I, in your way?" She smiled, quick and real. "Then I will say it again. You are strange and kind, and you do not make sense." "Does that mean yes?" She did not answer with words. Instead, she held out her hand, palm up, and waited. It was the first time she had offered her hand first, the first time she had asked him to wait instead of the other way around. Thom looked at her hand, at the crooked fingers and the calluses and the scars. He reached out slowly, giving her time to change her mind, and when she did not pull away, he laced his fingers through hers. Her hand was warm and strong, and it fit his as though it had always belonged there. They stood together in the twilight, the pasture quiet around them, and did not speak. There was nothing that needed to be said. The winter passed slowly, marked by snow and short days and the steady rhythm of work. Cara and Thom leased the pasture in the spring, and they moved the mare and the colt there on a bright morning in April. The grass was green and thick, and the creek ran clear over smooth stones. They built a small shelter together, framing it with oak and roofing it with pine shingles. Cara did the fine work, the joinery and the planing, and Thom did the heavy lifting. They worked well together, their movements easy and practiced, and when the shelter was done they stood back and looked at it with satisfaction. "It is a good start," Cara said. "It is. What comes next?" Thom glanced at her, then looked away, suddenly nervous. "I thought we might make it official." "Official? I thought we might marry, if you want." She went very still. "You want to marry me?" "I do." "Why?" He laughed, helpless. "Because I love you. Because I want to wake up beside you every morning and work beside you every day and fall asleep knowing you are there. Because I cannot imagine my life without you in it." She turned to face him fully. Her eyes were bright, and her face was soft in a way he had never seen before. "I love you too," she said. "I have for a long time. I was just afraid to say it. You do not have to be afraid, not with me. I know." She took his hand, the gesture easy now, familiar. Yes, I will marry you." They married in the summer, a small ceremony in Garrick's yard with Mabel and the magistrate and a handful of neighbors as witnesses. Cara wore a dress that Mabel had made, simple and pale green, and Thom wore his best shirt and a vest that Garrick had lent him. The magistrate spoke the words and they exchanged vows, and when it was done, Thom kissed her gently, carefully, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. She did not pull away. She kissed him back, her hands resting on his shoulders, and when they broke apart she was smiling. The wedding feast was simple: bread and roast chicken and a cake that Mabel had baked, and they ate and drank and laughed until the stars came out. When the guests had gone home, Cara and Thom walked back to the pasture together, hand in hand. The mare and the colt were waiting at the gate, and Cara stopped to scratch the mare's ears. "We did it," she said. "We did. I never thought I would have this." "Neither did I." She looked at him and her eyes were full. "Thank you. For what?" "For being patient, for waiting. For seeing me." Thom pulled her close, wrapped his arms around her and rested his chin on the top of her head. "You were worth the wait," he said. They stood like that for a long time, the night quiet around them, the stars wheeling overhead. The mare snorted and moved away to graze, and the colt followed. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called. Cara pulled back just enough to look up at him. "I am glad you reached for my hand that day," she said, "even though you flinched, especially because I flinched. Because you did not give up." Thom smiled. "I never will." "Good," she said, and kissed him again. They made a home together, slowly and carefully, building it the way they built everything else. They leased more land, bought more horses, and turned the pasture into a small breeding operation. Cara's skill with animals became well known, and people came from miles around to have her gentle their difficult horses. Thom kept working for Garrick, and Cara joined him when the horse work was slow. They saved their money, made plans, and dreamed of the future. 2 years after they married, Cara gave birth to a son. The labor was long and hard, and Thom paced the yard while Mabel and the midwife attended her. When it was over and the baby was cleaned and wrapped, Mabel brought him out to Thom with a smile. "You have a son," she said. "A strong, healthy boy." Thom took the baby carefully, his hands shaking. The boy was small and red-faced, with a tuft of dark hair and tiny fists that waved in the air. He had his mother's pointed ears, and when he opened his eyes they were the same dark brown. Thom carried him inside to Cara. She was pale and exhausted, but she smiled when she saw them. "Let me hold him," she said. Thom placed the baby in her arms, and she looked down at him with a wonder that made Thom's chest ache. "What should we call him?" she asked. Thom thought for a moment. "Edric," he said. "After my grandfather," Cara nodded. "Edric Lawson, I like it." The baby yawned and settled against her chest, and Cara looked up at Thom with tears in her eyes. "We made this," she said. "We did. He is perfect. He is." Edric grew quickly, a bright and curious child who followed his mother around the pasture and learned to whistle to the horses before he could speak in full sentences. He had Cara's resilience and Thom's steady temperament, and he was loved beyond measure. 3 years later, a daughter arrived. She was smaller than Edric had been, with Thom's fair hair and Cara's strong chin. They named her Muriel, and she grew up wild and fearless, climbing fences and racing her brother across the fields. The years passed in a blur of work and love and laughter. The horse operation grew, and Cara's reputation spread. Thom took over more of Garrick's business as the old man slowed, and eventually Garrick sold him the yard outright, retiring to a cottage at the edge of the village with Mabel. Cara and Thom built a house on the leased land, a sturdy 2-story structure with wide windows and a porch that overlooked the pasture. They filled it with the things they had made together, furniture and tools and small treasures collected over the years. On their 10th anniversary, Thom took Cara to the gate they had built when they first leased the land. It was weathered now, the wood silvered by sun and rain, but it was still sound. "You remember when we built this?" he asked. "Of course. You remember what you said?" "I said it was a good start." "It was," Thom said, "and it still is." Cara looked at him, her eyes crinkling at the corners. "We have built a good life," she said. "We have. I never thought I would have this. A home. A family. You." Thom took her hand, the gesture as natural as breathing. "You deserve it," he said. "All of it." She squeezed his hand, and he felt the crooked fingers press against his palm. She had stopped flinching years ago, had learned to accept his touch without fear. But the fingers were still crooked, still a reminder of the past. "Do they still hurt?" he asked. "Sometimes, when it rains. I wish I could fix them." "You did," she said. "Not the bones, but everything else." She lifted his hand and pressed it to her cheek, and he felt the warmth of her skin, the softness of her breath. "You fixed me," she said. "You and the children and this life we have made. You fixed all the broken parts." Thom pulled her close and kissed her forehead. "You were never broken," he said. "You were just waiting for someone to see you." They stood together at the gate, the pasture spread out before them, the horses grazing in the golden light. Edric and Muriel were playing near the creek, their laughter carrying on the wind. Cara leaned against Thom's shoulder and he wrapped his arms around her. "I love you," she said. "I love you too. Do you ever regret it, marrying me?" "Never, not for a single moment," she smiled, and it was the same quick smile he had seen that first day in the yard, but fuller now, easier. "Good," she said, "because I am not letting you go. I would not dream of it." They watched the sun set over the hills, the sky turning pink and gold and purple. The horses called to each other, soft nickers and low whinnies. The children came running up from the creek, their faces flushed and happy. Edric grabbed Thom's hand. "Papa, Muriel says she saw a fish as big as a dog." "Did she now?" "She is lying." Muriel stuck out her tongue. "I am not. It was huge." Cara laughed and ruffled Muriel's hair. "Fish do not grow that big in creeks, little one. This one did." Thom scooped Muriel up and swung her onto his shoulders. "Then we will have to go looking for it tomorrow." "Promise, promise." Edric tugged on Cara's sleeve. "Can we bring bread to feed it?" "Fish do not eat bread," Cara said. "Are you sure?" "Quite sure." They walked back to the house together, the four of them, the evening settling around them like a blanket. Inside, the lamps were lit and the fire was crackling in the hearth. Cara made supper while Thom helped the children wash up, and they ate together at the long table Thom had built from oak they had cut themselves. After supper, the children begged for a story, and Cara told them about the mare and the colt, about the day she had stood so still and let the mare come to her. The children had heard it before, but they never tired of it. When the story was done, Thom carried Edric to bed and Cara took Muriel, and they tucked them in with kisses and promises of fish hunting in the morning. Then they sat together by the fire, Cara in Thom's lap, her head resting on his shoulder. The house was quiet except for the crackle of the flames and the soft breathing of the children in the loft above. "This is everything I ever wanted," Cara said softly. "Me too. I am glad you did not give up on me. I never would have." She turned and kissed him, slow and sweet, and he kissed her back with all the love he had carried for her since that first day in the yard. When they broke apart, she traced the line of his jaw with her crooked fingers. "You are still a strange man, Thom Lawson. And you are still worth the wait, Cara Lawson." She smiled, and he saw in her eyes the girl who had flinched when he reached for her hand, and the woman who had learned to reach back. He saw the mother, the wife, the horsewoman, the craftsman. He saw all of her, every broken and mended piece, and he loved every single one. They sat by the fire until the logs burned down to embers, and then they went to bed together, wrapped in each other's arms. Outside, the stars turned overhead and the horses settled in the pasture, and the world was quiet and good in the morning. They would wake and start again, building and working and loving, one day at a time. They would hunt for imaginary fish and mend broken wheels and teach their children to be kind. They would grow old together, their hands still finding each other in the dark, their love still as strong as the day they had first clasped hands at the pasture gate. But for now they slept, safe and warm and whole, and the night kept watch over them all.